Welcome to Let Me Know How It Is, a pop culture podcast about animation, TV, movies, comics, and all things geek. We're reviewing the first 3 episodes of My Adventures with Superman. I'm Zach Slater.
I'm Frank Melman.
And I'm Clifton.
My Adventures with Superman is the latest cartoon series to focus on the Man of Steel. It stars Jack Quaid, Alice Lee, Ishmael Saeed in roles of Superman, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen, respectively. The show is developed by co-executive producer Jake Wyatt. Other credits include Brendan Kloger, co-executive producer, Josie Campbell, co-producer, Carly Benzin Hardikson, associate producer, Jane Back, series art director, Dao Hong, lead character designer, and Daniel Fucher and Dominic Lewis on music. Executive produced by Sam Register, the series is produced by Warner Brothers Animation and DC Studios and premieres Thursday nights at midnight on Adult Swim with next day streaming on Max. Alright, so let's jump into part 1. Part 1 of the 2-part pilot, Adventures of a Normal Man, opens in Smallville where we see a young boy immediately recognizable by his glasses and dark hair as a young Clark Kent. His kite is stuck up in a tree and he tries numerous ways of getting it down, showing us that he has not yet discovered his powers. He hears a speeding car on the street in front of his house. He tries to signal the driver to slow down because there's a big pothole up ahead. The car hits the pothole, skipping the tires, and sends the car careening toward a big tree. Clark runs to help, and in that moment, his powers are awakened. He speeds over, grabs the car, and stops it from crashing. Car drives off, but now he's super fast. He leaps and retrieves his kite, only now he's discovering he's flying. We have a majestic flying montage over Smallville where he pauses, takes it all in, and asks, how am I doing this? Who am I? And that's how we start the first episode. So what do we think? Just from the first, what is that, a minute? 2 minutes of the show?
Right. Yeah, it's pretty quick.
A
lot of stuff happens in that first minute or so. I think it's a really effective, introduction. And it's something we've seen scenes like this before.
Right.
With a young Clark, varying ages. It's always a different age, I think, in different tellings. But we've seen similar scenes before. And I think this is a fresh way to do it. It puts him a little younger, I think, than we see a lot of times. Not as young as Action Comics 1 when it's like the baby holding the Barca Lounger in that second panel. But in most of the tellings, it's a younger one. And I do like it. I do like that it is like such like a young realization to him and kind of innocent at the same time too.
Mm-hmm. My first take on it was I really liked the, I thought the S on his shirt, you know, if you're of a certain age,
right.
That S is very telling of like, oh yeah. So many books, school books with that drawn on it, gives it a feeling of from another time. So, really cements it without actually having to do, a lot of like explaining of like, well, when is this set? And, when does Superman come of age and all that good stuff.
Right.
I like that a whole lot. I thought that was really clever to do it that way.
Yeah, it does double duty. I mean, sure, it's like it's a Smallville shirt or something, I'm sure. But yeah, like that angular S.
Yep.
Drilled into so many kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had a chance to look at Last Son of Krypton recently, and it has a similar scene, but it's obviously shuffled because in that one it's after the reveal of of going to Krypton or going to see about Krypton that he has that moment of running off and then, oh wow, this isn't so bad, I can fly.
Right.
That whole scene, and I love that scene. I think that scene in that show is great. But in this instance,
Superman the animated series,
right? From Superman the animated
series,
from was it 92?
No, 96.
Wow, 96. Okay,
yeah.
I'm old, but it's I like I like the similarities between the two scenes, but I think this one does work well in the fact that it skews him a little bit younger. I think that's a nicer bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it does. Again, you get a lot of. One thing I like about it is even before he really knows he has powers, he's still trying to tell that lady, hey, slow down.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is, again, telling of character. That's not him being Superboy or Superman. It's just Clark Kent's a decent kid, and he doesn't want the lady to hit the pothole because it could basically flip her car over or run her into a tree or whatever. So,
and he runs after it not knowing he has powers.
Right. Yeah, there's that too.
Like, they just happen to kick in at that moment. But,
Yeah, something I noticed too, because like, yeah, it's all instinctual. It's completely instinctual for him at that point. Even grabbing the car, stopping it. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He just knows he wants to do something, and that's what
Right.
he does.
Right.
And then after he saves her, it's not even like he's just like, yeah, like okay, like I did that because that needed to be done. But when he gets his kite, like he's happy and excited because like saving somebody was just instinct. Like it had to be done. Getting his kite was like a kid, like the innocence of it. The kid being like, oh, well, this is kind of cool now.
Right.
I like that. I think it's a good decision on the showrunner's parts to make him at least an age where he can sort of perceive what's happening. As fun as the visuals of like a baby holding the tractor over his head that we've seen in other Superman things and tellings of the origin.
They're trying to give him a shot and bending the needle, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's like the Kents wouldn't have a home.
No,
you know, like you know, kids are like so accidentally destructive,
right,
that it would be like Baby Godzilla. Like there would be no Smallville. So that's just my thing. Like right off the bat, they kind of like made a decision, and I'm like, yeah, no, I think that's the way it's got to be, right?
Yeah.
So all right, so we cut to Metropolis, and I should say now too that we're gonna spoil everything about the first 3 episodes. So but all right, so we cut to Metropolis. Young adult roommates Clark Kent and Jimmy Olsen wake up excited. Smash cut to Lois waking up in her apartment, also very excited. It's their first day as interns at the Daily Planet. We cut back and forth seeing how Lois and Clark approach this special day differently. Nervous Clark coaches himself just to be normal and hide and control his powers. Lois, on the other hand, coaches herself to be extraordinary so she can become a real reporter. Clark and Lois meet by chance at a neighborhood cafe where there's an instant attraction between the two. Clark rushes out after being sweetly embarrassed by the mom and pop owners. With a box of donuts for the staff in hand, Clark and Jimmy rush off to the planet, almost having a hit and run by a speeding garbage truck driven by a woman with an awesome haircut. At the planet, Lois bursts into Perry White's office, catching wind that there's some experimental robots were stolen from a nearby military base. She assumes that she's going to get the assignment, but Perry scolds Lois, telling her that she's just an intern, and that her job is to show the new interns Clark and Jimmy the ropes. She isn't to report the news, and this is her last chance to do as he says or be fired. Lois lies to Clark and Jimmy, though, saying Perry instead wants them to help her cover the stolen robot story. So, all right, there we go. What'd you guys think of Clark's jog and the first meeting of Lois and Clark?
I love the bit about I gotta save the cat. I had to save the cat. I thought that was a nice. Again, speaks to character of no, can't just. As much as I want to play things normal, I can't just pretend that this isn't, someone isn't in need and I have to help them. I like that bit. I thought that was fun.
Yeah. I like that he has a compulsion to help.
Yes.
But with no goals or presumption of becoming a hero at all.
Right.
That's what I like about it. Like, oh, there's a little girl who lost her cat. Let me go help.
Yeah.
At
first I kind of went, I don't know about Jimmy and Clark being roommates, but it works so well.
Yeah, that's something similar where I didn't know anything about the show going into it. I hadn't watched any of the trailers, I don't think. So I kept some notes like when I'm watching the first time, like not too thoroughly, but just like some quick thoughts as things happen, just so I'll remember like what I was thinking when I first saw it. And one of the ones was like, oh, they're young. Like I didn't realize that they weren't adults in this show. I had only ever seen the initial art, which, I'm sure they looked young, but it's animation. Like they could be whatever age they're supposed to be. So I didn't know that they were actually like college age, or I guess college age, because they're interns. So it was an interesting take, I thought. I wasn't quite expecting it, but yeah, for Jimmy and Clark to be already his pal and not acquire him through the Daily Planet as normal is the telling. An interesting choice.
I dig that scene so much when he goes to the cafe. And I like kind of like the small town sensibility that seems to follow him.
Yeah.
Where like everybody knows him in this big city too, as like the guy that helps out.
Right.
I think is really, really, really cool. And I I like how smitten Clark and Lois are with each other, like literally from the first sight of each other.
Right.
You know, because so much of the time it's Lois and Superman.
Yeah.
And I like that she likes Clark, like right off the bat, which is cool. On top of the fact, it's kind of fun that like Clark is confident enough that when he sees Lois, like he's immediately going up to talk to her.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, there's none of that. There's, kind of clumsy, awkward Clark without it being ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's still, like you said, confident enough to talk to her. Has a nice recover with a bit about the bib. That doesn't deter him from being like, well. And I like to think what reminded me of the small town sensibility thing kind of reminded me of Peter in like Homecoming, Peter Parker, I should say. I'm sorry. Mm. Peter Parker in Homecoming, with the fact that, even if he's not in his suit, people in the neighborhood know him.
Right.
And I thought it was very reminiscent of that in a good way. Like, I didn't feel like it was something like they were just using the short, some kind of shorthand. But at the same time, I do agree with you that it does feel very much that, he does help out. He is known for being just a good person, even out of the costume.
Right. I also like that they're displaying the fact that, like, him controlling his powers, like, takes effort.
Yeah.
Which is
it's nice when he like rips his shoes. that was what I never thought, I thought about it as soon as I saw it. Well, of course, you got to pull your shoe on with some force sometimes, and his force is obviously way more than ours.
Right.
So of course he would just tear a pair of shoes apart. And I don't think that's a Superman bit that I don't think I've ever seen in anything.
Right.
I've seen, like, I think it's Superman 3 where he sneezes and blows the bowling ball through the back of the bowling alley with Lana Lang's kid, or the bit with or like closing the door too hard or shaking somebody's hand too hard, but not the bit with the shoe. I thought the bit with the shoe was just the best. I thought it was so good.
And in this one, he did have to remind himself not to crush Perry's hand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So it turns out the woman with the awesome haircut is one of the thieves that stole the robots.
Mm.
She reveals to a cohort that they need to get the robots out of town before they're caught because all the buyers in town have dried up. So they start to move the trucks with the robots. Meanwhile, Lois, Clark, and Jimmy return to the same neighborhood cafe because Lois has some reliable sources she can chat with for leads. The source, though, is a bunch of kids whose job is to distribute the Daily Planet's newspaper, but nonetheless, they see and hear everything in the neighborhood. So they give the interns a tip, but Perry calls Clark, yelling at them to get back to the planet now or else. Clark confronts Lois about her lying to them. They have a fight, and Lois takes Jimmy and leaves to chase down the story, ranting to Jimmy about his big, dumb, beautiful friend Clark. I love that bit.
Yeah.
But she realizes that maybe she didn't have to lie to good-natured Clark because he would have helped her, like, if she just asked him.
Right.
So that's when they stumble upon the robots being moved at the docks. The lady thief sees them, and then one of the mercenaries unleashes the robots to take care of them. Big, dumb, beautiful friend.
Yes. Big, dumb, beautiful, cowardly friend.
Yes.
I laughed so hard at that bit.
That's a good bit.
Yeah. The informants, I love.
Of course.
I love her informants. The News Kid Legion.
Oh.
Great Jack Kirby throwback or nod through to the Newsboy Legion as it was then.
Mm-hmm.
Golden Age,
mm-hmm.
Classic Golden Age characters from early days of comics.
Yes.
And making them news kids is a perfect, modernization of it.
Mm.
That's when I'm like, oh yeah, this show's going places that I know I'll be able to follow it because I like their take so far. I like some of the stuff they're gravitating to so far.
Yeah, I had a split second before I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. It's a Newsboy Legion. I'm like, it's News Kid Legion. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just before they, Flip says who they are, I'm like, this is perfect. This works out so well.
They're the ones walking the beat.
Yeah.
They know what's going on in the streets.
They're out there going wuckstree.
Yep.
Read all about it.
Of all the things to homage Kirby with, I love that it's them because as I like to point out a lot on this show, Darkseid was created in Jimmy Olsen, right? Like he's a Kirby creation. You got all the Fourth World stuff that it seems like other Superman stuff, especially like modern stuff, like can't wait to get to.
Yeah. And it was the Newsboy Legion at the time was in the Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen 70s Fourth World book with Kirby, right?
Yeah, they were.
Yeah,
because it's all the Cadmus stuff. That's all that Double X and all that.
Because it was something he had originally created in the Golden Age when he was at DC the first time, I think the first time, and then was able to revisit, later in his career when he went back to DC at a latter time. So it is something that he had enough affinity for that he went to multiple times. Like he went to that well multiple times. So it is nice to see something that he had such a hand in involved in this.
Yeah, I just like the fact that there's even like a little bit of like within their paper, even a little bit of the Guardian.
Right. Yeah.
Teasing the idea that, all that stuff's out there in Metropolis. You just may not have seen it yet, but they have.
Right.
They know it's out there. So
the show has some fun Easter eggs.
Yes.
Definitely. Because that's also the bit, because they're rolling with Jimmy as like a conspiracy theorist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting take, but like he's talking about, I guess the gag is like he's talking about stuff that's true.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
And like some of the stuff he brings up are like mer people, which I guess is like Atlantis.
Right.
And then like Gorilla City stuff.
Yeah.
The thing I thought, Zach, was originally that it was Gorilla City, but it's French gorillas.
Right. Monsieur Mala.
So it's Mala.
Right.
Which was the other one I was like, oh yeah, that makes more sense that it would be Mala. I didn't even think about Mala. But yeah, most of the stuff that he mentions, you're like, oh yeah, well I know what he's, we know what he's alluding to. But I think that's a cool bit, and I like the bit with I like the idea that Lois is helping Flip with her homework.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought that was the thing that again, it's not simply oh, well, you work for the paper, I work for the paper. No, there's more of a quid pro quo between the two of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Than I thought would have been, immediate.
And their negotiations required snacks.
Yes.
She had to throw in snacks as a term of agreement.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, man, I don't know. We're 7 minutes into the show, and it feels a lot like a Lois Lane year one.
A little bit.
Which made me go, like, somebody needs to write that book.
Right.
I'm actually quite surprised that there isn't. It's silly. The other thing I really liked in this bit, too, is when the thief, who's still unnamed at this point, I like when she yells, like, go, like, stop them, like, get them, and then the one mercenary lets the robot out. She's like, why would you use the robot?
Right. Yeah.
I think by this point we had heard her first name.
Yes.
Once from her henchman. He does say her first name once, but we don't know who she is yet.
Right. All right, so the robots try and kill Lois and Jimmy. Clark returns to help, but he's swatted away by the robot. The robot continues after Lois and Jimmy. Clark comes to, but puts on a nearby dock worker uniform and fights the robot in disguise, but in plain sight for everyone to see. This mystery man with incredible powers. The lady thief, now having to deal with a superhero, lets all the robots out.
Yeah.
Clark fights, eventually defeating them all, but with some difficulty. Lois can't see the hero is floating in the air, but calls to him. He flies off silently. Lois and Jimmy find Clark. Lois is so happy and apologizes to him. Enter Jimmy, who says he caught the whole fight on camera. Lois exclaims that this Superman fighting off stolen military robots is the story of the century. Perry, unfortunately, angrily disagrees because all of Jimmy's pictures came out blurry. He's about to fire Lois, but Clark stands with her, corroborating everything she says and says she was right about everything. Perry then agrees that if they bring him good pictures of this Superman, then he will then print their story. Lois promises to her friends no more secrets, and then vows that they'll stick together and track down Superman, learn all of his secrets, and publish them. And that's the end of part one.
Right.
I love how, like, a million miles an hour Lois is at becoming a reporter.
Yes.
Right.
And she'll take anyone down with her to try to make it happen. At least for now. No, like it's the core of these characters is there from these episodes. That's what I catch. Where I'm like, yep. I'm not questioning like, oh, Clark wouldn't do that. Oh, like Jimmy running in with crazy ideas. There might be different crazy ideas than we've seen a Jimmy have before. But no, Jimmy like running in like wildly with a crazy idea is Jimmy.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he'll do. And Lois doggedly, chasing the scoop. That's what she'll do. They're there. Like the foundations are solid from what I'm seeing on all the characters so far in this.
I like the idea of the fact that we're setting up way, way early, sort of the conundrum of, wait a minute. You have this high ground that you're coming at Lois with, Clark, but you have a secret.
Right.
Yeah.
You have a major secret, and it's one of the things where they're caught up in it now. And you're basically, when that reveal happens, which I'm guessing they may go that way, they may not, I don't know yet, whether or not they're going to get to a point of like, him showing, and we'll talk more about it when other episodes. But it just seems, unlike other times, there definitely is that idea of, we have, there's, it's not so much I'm just going to get, use my powers to get an interview with Superman like Clark does in some of the other tellings. This is much more of a, like I said, a much bigger betrayal being set up, I feel like, than other times.
Right.
Just because, again, he's already had a moment of Lois being like somewhat, making a bad choice, and then it becoming, oh yeah, by the way, I'm Superman. So, so we don't normally get that.
Right.
Most times Lois is pretty much, she gets herself into trouble and he has to bail her out as Superman. It's not necessarily so much a questioning of whether or not she lied to them or not, which I thought was interesting.
No, I know. That is definitely a source of stress, like in watching the show. Like, when is this gonna...
Right.
when is this gonna come to a head?
And I also like the kind of bit when he puts on the dock worker thing. It's it reminded me of kind of the David Dunn Unbreakable, like hoodie that Bruce Willis's character wears. The idea that obviously he took what was there to make it work. He didn't have an actual costume at that point.
Yeah. So
he just threw on what was necessary. I loved all the bits with the robots. I love the fact that on top of the fact that, Clark does the typical, I got hurt, now I can go be Superman bit or super powered or whatever. But I love the fact that once Lois figures noodles it through of like, oh, I can go stop these robots. She does. Like that. I love that bit too. I think that's really important that she has no problem just running and like, throwing herself in harm's way to try and stop, the robots herself. I think that really is, again, there's a lot of really good speaking to character bits without having to like hit you over the head with what these characters are about. And I agree with Clifton. Like so far, there's been no moment of like, well, they wouldn't do that. Everything is true to character so far for what I think those characters would do.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is great.
I agree.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, like worth pointing out, like she stops the robots.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
This is not an easy fight for Superman.
No.
Like, he has trouble, and that's one of the things I like about it too. Is like he gets a black eye in the fight.
Yeah,
and while his powers are getting played with in kind of like an unpredictable way, like he doesn't know what they all are or anything, and it heals up pretty quick. But
right,
well,
he does the bit of he flies close to the sun.
Right,
he flies when he sort of basks in that moment of like, okay, I'm a little better now, and then I can go back to being just, ruffled, hair tousled, thrown in some boxes Clark, as opposed to, totally eviscerated by a robot Clark.
Right, right.
I had a moment where I thought of you, Frank, when we were reviewing Action Comics #1 for our Superman Celebration episode. Okay. And you said, like, in these panels, it like Superman likes to lead with his chin a lot.
Yeah.
And I really thought about that watching the fight, because he's done in a way that like he just will fling himself into the robots.
Yeah.
to like knock them over and stuff, which I think is really, really cool. And then just flying up and punching it.
Right. Well, yeah, but again, it's one of those things of I always think about whenever, especially when in retellings of origins, a lot of times characters just don't have that thing of, and I guess writers just didn't occur to most of them at the time, was when you're superpowered and you've been superpowered for a while, but maybe you don't have your act together, you don't have a costume or whatever, until you run into something that's going to cause you pain, you kind of figure, well, I could probably lead with my chin and be okay.
Right.
And not have to worry about it. I do think it's funny though, looking at it again, like I said, I'd seen Last Son of Krypton, the second part recently, and how that whole plot is also stolen tech and robots.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is not again, nothing against these shows, nothing against the writers, I love Superman punch a robot. That's awesome. But it was just kind of like, okay. And again, it felt very echoey, which I'm fine with. But we'll talk more about, like, I don't want to get into the synopsis stuff because we need to keep it moving. But I'll circle back to echoes of other things.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's references or inspirations I was seeing in this stuff too. Again, like I said, it's like inspirations where I was like, oh yeah, like I like that thing. So like, I'm totally going to jump into this because you're inspired by things I like.
Yeah.
In this case, it was the classic Fleischer cartoons, the classic Fleischer cartoon, one of the first Superman adaptations, along with the serial, the first animated adaptation of Superman back in the 40s. And one of the serial shorts was called The Mechanical Monsters, where Superman fights a robot. I was like, is that what this is? I was like, are they drawing inspiration from early Superman animation? And I really do think they are.
Yeah.
It looked like a modern take on kind of that mechanical monster boxy robot back in the 40s, but I could see it. Like, I could see a through line to it. And then also the Superman that like really has to struggle against that robot is kind of part of that classic one. And I like to see it, especially in this kind of telling where this is a Superman who obviously hasn't been going full tilt as Superman in any way. He has his powers. He uses his powers when he can, but he hasn't really had to push it yet. And these are like, we're seeing the first times when he really is hitting resistance in it. I think, and I really like that. I really like to see the kind of struggle.
Yeah.
Like he's a little bruised up, which you're not used to seeing.
Yeah, I thought the Fleischers too with these mechs, and it just came to me as, well, the Fleischers designed what they thought were cool looking robots in 1940. I should know this. 1944.
40.
I can't remember for sure.
And now we're just updating it to be what cool robots would look like now.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like the Fleischers by way of Neon Genesis Evangelion. That's what it looked like to me.
But yeah, I thought the same thing, Griffin, where I'd seen Mechanical Monsters recently. And like, again, okay.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, it's great.
I mean, that bit of the, still love the bit of the cape and the molten. Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah. But yeah, that was what I thought that too. So watching all of that, the last Son of Krypton and that together, and now this, I was like, okay, I see our nods. Which again, it's not over. Again, if you don't know that, if you wouldn't, it's not a nod like, oh look, that guy's going to become Metallo, right? That's not. Yeah. It's not one of those type of nods. It's a different kind of nod. And that's fine. Yeah, it works. It works. So,
and it's stuff that totally fits the story in this. Like, it totally serves the story.
And
Absolutely,
it's a fun Easter egg because I mean,
it is.
Those Fleischer shorts are fantastic. I love them, but I mean, those Mechanical Monsters are like overwhelmingly the thing that gets referenced from those shorts.
Yeah,
yeah. All right, so let's save because I have a list of references too. So let's save it for the end of part 2.
All right.
And we'll just sort of like list a lot of stuff that we that we think they're referencing because there is a lot, I think. Yeah. All right, so Adventures of a Normal Man Part 2. Lois wants to get the scoop on Superman. They can get a lead if they can find the thieves who stole the robots. Meanwhile, Clark feigns a stomach bug and returns to Smallville to revisit the crash site and try and learn more about his origin. A hologram appears, speaking a language we can't understand. Clark deduces that this is his birth father, Jor-El, and then encounters visions of Krypton's destruction. The hologram then materializes the familiar Superman suit onto Clark's body. Meanwhile, the lady thief is being tracked not just by Lois and Jimmy, but by the government agency she stole the robots from. She fights off 2 agents tailing her, and then tells their leader via their earpieces she'll meet up with them, but they better come alone. Lois and Jimmy on her trail see that the still unnamed thief has rigged explosives all over the city beneath Metropolis. They track down the lady thief during her meeting with an unnamed now lead agent. She thinks it's all a trap and moves to detonate the explosives. The agent fights her off as Lois and Jimmy try to go for the detonator. So, obviously for these next couple episodes, I'm going to cover more ground in these descriptions. But so that's the first half of part 2. So, jump in wherever you guys like.
So this one, when it goes to the flashback again, where we see young Clark, this might be my favorite telling of seeing a young Clark find out about Krypton.
Mm-hmm.
When he's this young, impressionable, innocent age. And that it scares him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is fantastic that like he can't understand the language. He doesn't know what this like ghostly guy is trying to say. And it's scary to him and he's confused. And his first instinct is to, like, in a matter of seconds, rebury the ship.
Yeah,
like,
I love that bit too.
Everything about this is so good. But just like the fear and the confusion and him, asking who he is.
Yep.
And his adoptive mom saying, like, you're my son no matter what. Like, like it's all so good and authentic and has so much heart.
Yeah.
It's definitely my favorite version of him finding out. Because a lot of times he seems a little blasé about it, if I'm being honest.
Right. No,
like
you're
he
right.
seems to accept it a little quickly.
Yep.
Or uncritically.
This is a scene that flashback scene where he's a kid discovering it was the only clip that I had seen of the show before the episode aired. Right? Outside of like the 16-second trailer that came out for it. And that scene alone made me go like, oh, we're in good hands. Right? Because it was also the moment where like the ship appears to be kind of like causing some tremors in the land.
Right.
And the ground's kind of eroding and like Ma and Pont are in danger of falling.
Right.
And Clark immediately turns his back on the Kryptonian stuff to go help Mom and Dad from Earth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. I'm like, no, that's symbolic. He's much more of Earth than he is of Krypton.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
And I love that they get that.
Yeah. No, very much so. Yeah, I like all of the all the stuff with that bit. Just the covering up is nice. That again, that question of, well, am I what am I, and am I still your son? And they're immediately like, yep, no matter what, you're a kid. No, without question. That's always a good bit when you're dealing with the Kents. If you're not doing it that way, you're doing it wrong. Yeah, I just the fact that I agree with Clifton that sometimes it is, like I said, Last Son of Krypton. Well, I love it, and Zach, you and I have often talked about how it's it's one of our favorite retellings of the origin outside of comics for sure. But the fact that, and even in that one, like I said, I was joking earlier about the fact that once he can fly, it kind of takes the sting out of like, well, where am I? Who am I really? Am I a freak? Am I an alien? What's going on? He sort of, no pun intended, comes back down to Earth after punching out probably a load bearing piece of the barn when he found out that he was from Krypton. But yeah, I think that part is great. The whole thing with I like the whole Lois and Jimmy kind of getting over their heads. That's a classic bit. One thing I truly loved was I thought the Sailor Mooning.
Magical girl Superman.
Yes, of his costume was great. I was perfectly fine with that.
It was a very fun one.
What I loved even more was Ma going, no, you need something to break that up.
Yeah, me too.
Which I was just like, go Ma Kent. Because again, you get the modern costume, but you also get the bit of, my mom made it for me kind of bit.
Yeah.
Which, from Superman for All Seasons by Loeb and Tim Sale, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Just a bit, because most of the tellings when the Kents are alive, it's Mom making some kind of costume. And the last, like I've talked about this before, was the ones I really liked was Martha being curious about the spaceship, kind of has like a moment of like touching this thing and has like this tactile reaction where she sees in her mind what people at Krypton wore.
Yeah.
And she wanted him to have something from his culture. So she took, that's the telling from Jeff Johns and Gary Frank's last telling, where basically it's, and I like that one too, is just the idea that she's, that's what people on Krypton would wear. So she made a suit for him out of his old baby clothes or his baby blankets and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So that he would have something that would look like where he's actually from. Meanwhile, at the same time being of Earth as well. So, but I love this.
Yeah, you hit on a lot there that I love Ma that makes the suit. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. But then when she went because when he appears, it's the new 52 onesie.
It is.
And then she goes like, it needs something else. It needs a belt and some shorts or something. And then she gives him the red short. And I'm like, to quote Tommy, I was like, I'm good.
Right.
I'm good. You know?
Yes. Right. Yeah.
But what I love about it, though, too, the fact that it appears on him, it makes the cape Kryptonian, like a Kryptonian culture thing, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And not an Earth thing, which I think is neat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And also interesting that we're getting a lot more Ma and Clark when typically it's Pa and Clark.
Right.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
And I was a little nervous that, like, when he stepped away, I was like, oh, heart attack, right? Heart attack. He's going to come back, he's going to be dead. But, like, no, I love that he comes back and he's like, no, it suits you.
Yeah. Well, no, the line that I love is, ooh, that's one heck of a getup.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, he accepts it. Like, he doesn't like, whoa, I don't know. You know, he's like, no, it's just, oof. You know, it's not even, it's very much a father-son thing of like, okay, you're going to wear that in public? All right. And it just goes, what I like is that Martha is much more questioning and Jonathan is much more accepting.
Yeah.
Because normally it's the other way around. Like again, when I watch in Last Subject Krypton, I'd keep harping on it, but you know, that whole thing is like, Martha, we don't know where this thing is from.
Yeah.
Talking about Clark, right?
Yeah.
Talking about Clark and coming out of the ship. He's like, we don't know if it's Russians or one of ours. You know, don't just, he's almost like, don't pick that up.
Right.
You know? And she's like, come on, it's a baby. Relax. But I like this one. He's like, yeah, it's okay.
Anything else you guys want to touch upon before we continue on?
I guess we should talk. Well, the only thing I would think about was just the whole chat between Leslie and the mystery man. But if you have captioning on, it's not a mystery man.
Oh, you found out in captioning?
That's how I found out. Yes,
I saw in the credits because now they're doing this thing, a great thing. They're doing this thing in the credits now where they're saying they're offering creator credits to like a lot of the characters that are appearing. So that's how I found out. But we'll get to that.
One little thing from this scene, it's similar to when you were mentioning before, just like the little bit you cracked up on for your stupid, like your dumb, beautiful, cowardly friend. Like another moment like that was when it was Lois and Jimmy walking around and Jimmy tells Lois to text Clark. And she's like, I don't have his number. And he just sends it to her like, you know, within a second without saying anything and says, now you do.
Yeah.
And she's so flustered by it. Like it's such a nice little cute moment to show her flustered like at all. Because Lois is so controlled.
I love when he texts Clark a selfie of them. And she's like, you got to let me approve the pictures next time.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good bit. That was funny too. Yeah.
Oh, like God. That was such a great moment for me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I agree with Clifton. The idea that we see a Lois that is it's not so much that she's not the character, but that we get to see a little bit of her not in her typical facade or veneer so much. Is great. Like again, it's not out of character. It's just one of the things that we don't normally see her that way, and I think it's awesome. So. Yeah,
I do too. All right, so Superman arrives, but the thief reveals that she has a exoskeleton that gives her electricity powers, revealing that this is Livewire.
Yeah.
Superman and her fight, causing a lot of destruction. With distraction by the agent, Superman is able to remove her suit's power core, a crystal, which gives him visions again when he touches it. This causes a painful power flux that envelops and incapacitates Livewire. Back at the planet, though, Jimmy now has clear pictures of the fight, and Perry agrees to publish the story, but the interns see that the staff reporters, Cat Grant, Ronnie Troop, and Steve Lombard are credited with the byline and not them. We end the episode on Livewire, a prisoner at the government facility being interrogated about what she knows about certain events and projects by the lead agent from the fight. The agent is hidden behind two-way glass with two figures never named behind him. One whose identity we don't know, and the other one is clearly Amanda Waller. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. End of part 2.
Yes.
It was a good fight.
Going to Livewire as a villain, I like. Being again, this is a character that has source in animation. Her origin is animation before comics. If I remember right, that is correct, right? From Superman the Animated Series.
Yep.
That she's kind of like their Harley Quinn for the Superman the Animated Series. So I kind of like that she's the first actual supervillain that we know of that this Superman fights. Is one that has such a strong foundation in animation in this new animated show.
Right.
I kind of like that like circle of it. But yeah, no, you're right, man. It's an awesome fight scene. Like it's a great fight scene. Like all of the action so far has been very kinetic.
Yeah. I love that after he crushes the crystal, he's like breathing hard after it, like he's tired.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like it's a Superman that gets tired. It's a Superman that, you know, Frank, we talk about all the time. It's what we loved about Superman the animated series was like Superman can get hurt, and this one appears to be like even more like brought down a couple of pegs than that, even that show.
Yeah, they're not quite like, obviously they're not rolling back to Golden Age. Like he's not obviously he's not leaping. He's not fast in the locomotive. There's no bursting shell that can hurt him kind of a thing.
Right.
But again, throughout both Superman the animated series and say like Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, if you have electricity, you can light him up for sure. That's one of the ones that he was constantly getting hurt by. Like anyone with electrical powers would he would take that. But yeah, I think the idea that he's somewhat vulnerable. I mean, he's obviously not human, not like going to be like a bullet can't stop him. But and again, so far it's not been anything where it's the usual suspects. Like it's not your kryptonite, it's not your magic. That sort of thing. I like the idea of that being, he's more than you and I, but at the same time, he's not moving planets.
Right.
Yeah.
That's for sure. He's not the Silver Age Superman. So
yeah.
I think going back to episode 1, like the fact that he's jogging, like I don't think that's for appearances.
Yeah.
I think it's something that like no. Like I still have to exercise.
Yeah. No, I can see that. Yeah. No, I can see that.
Right. It takes more to overwhelm him, but he can be overwhelmed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is how I take it. In this fight scene, there's another thing, just going to the character and heart of the character. And what I like to see in this is when Leslie shorts out because of her gear that apparently is, alien tech powered, I'm going to guess. And she shorts out and becomes, for all intents and purposes, Livewire, the electrified version. Superman doesn't see it as a villaining out. He sees her as someone who needs help.
Right.
And jumps up into the fray of the electricity to try to figure out how to save her from it.
Yeah.
Right.
Not fight her, not like, vanquish, but like he's like, I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
And I really like that take. Yeah, in the middle of this fight and everything that's happening, where it's like his first instinct is like, oh, this person needs saving.
Yeah.
Yep. I like that part bit. I like the fact that he cleans up.
I do too.
It's such a Smallville Clark Kent thing to do, of making sure that the mess they got made, he makes sure to put everything back where it was, which I thought was awesome.
I might be reading into just like my own Superman preferences, though. I think that's very much a Man of Steel nod in a way. Where like that movie caught so much flack for like the disaster porn and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that like at the end of it, they're like, nope, this one cleans up.
Yes.
He tries to fix it as best as he can.
Yes, it's a Goofus and Gallant. From highlights, this Superman destroys the entire city and snaps necks. This Superman cleans up and tries to save his enemy.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Now that I think about it that way, yeah, it makes a lot more sense that he's willing to do that. But yeah, I like I like the whole. I mean, I'm guessing it's if he's able. My only thing was, are we speculating about what these crystals are, or are we waiting to save that for later?
What you got?
No, my only thought was, I mean, if it's because again, my first thought is it's alien tech. So my first brain thought was, well, is it going to be something along the lines of it has to be intergang, but that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing if he's reacted to it on some kind of level, that it has to be some kind of sunstone technology, which is Kryptonian, which again makes me wonder where in the world did that all come from. But But yeah, that was the thing I went with the harness at first, and then the whole thing with she might not need it.
Right. Yeah, it got transferred into her. And we do see in this one, like it triggers something in him.
Yeah.
It kind of like he appears to level up a little.
Yeah.
Around in one of these scenes, but then it seems to trigger memory and implant something we don't know what yet, but he reacts to it clearly.
Yep.
What other nods and inspirations do you think they're taking?
I had a thought about the end of the episode and the agent and the other character, who that was or who could be.
Who, the one we don't know who he is?
The other one, yeah, the one we don't know for sure. I mean, obviously, one, like you said, is Amanda Waller, and the other one we know. Are we talking about him or are we saving him?
I'm conflicted about what to say. I mean, clearly because people know it's out there and they say it in the credits,
Right?
but they're not saying it in the show,
Right.
Mm.
you know.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But no, I for the one that's on the other side of him, that's not Amanda Waller. I had the thought that it's not, because I thought maybe it's Rick Flag, but I think it is Rick Flag. I just think it's senior, not junior.
I had the thought it's Rick Flag also, but I also had one other one.
Okay.
What if it's Lois's dad?
I thought that too. I thought about that too. But the only reason, Zach, I thought it might be Rick Flag Sr. was the idea of the original squad.
Yeah.
That fought Kaiju.
Oh, right.
You know, it's all that 50 stuff is them, you know, his squad.
Stuff.
Yeah, fighting, you know, Dinosaur Island and fighting giant monsters. And I thought, you know, that it might lend itself to that, since we've never really seen that aspect of it played up in you know, it's always a modern squad, which no issues there, but I'm just saying that was my thought.
Not from us.
No.
Not from
No.
us.
No.
But I mean, it's not just us grasping at straws. I mean, like that agent says Task Force X by name.
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
And so, like, that's the squad. And so there's
Right.
whatever is happening in that world, you know, the government is working on that project.
Mhm.
Right?
What were some of the other name drops that Livewire was asked about along with Task Force X?
Did you catch them, Frank? Because I didn't know what the other ones were.
I did, but I wasn't familiar with them either. I didn't know if it was
Okay.
stuff that they were tossing in, like stuff that's known with unknown
Right.
stuff, or it's all
Yeah.
known and I just didn't get a chance to look it up, so I don't know for sure.
Yeah, like if
Right.
you two didn't know them, then I'm going to guess that, yeah, it's like a combination of new concepts plus classic concept.
Right. Yeah, I
Task
thought
Force X.
that's how I took it, Clifton, was it was basically something that obviously we know, which is Task Force X, and then either it's more recent, like New 52-ish, or it's
Mhm.
just something like, oh no, just wait till we get to what these are.
Right.
Yeah. So other than though, so like you were saying, Clifton, like Livewire, it's a good choice starting off. I mean, it says right off the bat, like you're saying, like it's a nod to that other good Superman cartoon that came
Right.
before them.
Yeah.
You know, and then we had like the Fleischers with the robots as a reference. So I'll toss one. I think the fact that it's so Lois and Clark relationshipy feels like a nod to the Dean Cain Terry Hatcher
Yeah.
show to me.
Yeah, I can see that too.
You know?
And I do like the fact that we get a little bit of, well, I mean, I'll just put it, I like the fact that we get a couple episodes where it's Lois and Clark, right? Yeah, Superman's out there, but it's not like, at this point, it's not as if Lois is enamored with Superman as a man. It's just the concept and the fact that he could put her on the map,
Right.
you know, and she likes Clark, which I think is, again, something we don't always see. You know, I don't know if we've ever seen it, really. Just the idea that that's what she wants. The Superman story is what she wants. She doesn't necessarily want, quote unquote, Superman,
Yeah.
which I think is an interesting take.
It gives me a touch Smallville feels too. The fact that it's so Clark heavy,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and I like that there's a concerted effort to like, let's make Clark interesting and let's not,
Mhm.
you know, like you're saying, yeah, because I can't picture a situation either where it's always been everybody's sort of like why would she go after Clark? Superman's
Right.
over there, you know what I mean?
Right.
I like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I put it this way. So far, at least as it's been, as we've seen so far, I'd say this Clark has a fighting chance against Superman.
I think so too. Right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it's quite as lopsided as it is in other tellings at all. I think this very much so that I'm like, oh yeah, you know, if they were genuinely two separate people, I think Lois might have a hard time trying to choose
Right.
Mhm.
because she really seems enamored with Clark.
Yeah.
So
All right. Should we go to episode 3?
sure.
All right. Episode 3, titled My Interview with Superman. Lois continues her crusade for an exclusive interview with Superman while Clark has to juggle helping her while still keeping his identity secret. Meanwhile, experimental weapons left over from the Livewire theft are still out in the wild and finding their way into the hands of two criminals, Kyle and his powerhouse friend Roughhouse. Using the tech, which grants Kyle invisible cloaking abilities and Roughhouse abilities that augment his strength, they break Kyle's sister Shaban out of jail and give her a mask that amplifies sound. News of the jailbreak hits the Daily Planet. Clark, fearful of the damage that the weapons can cause, needs to find and stop them, and as a cover, he pitches tracking them down for a story. This aligns perfectly with Lois's plan to get the scoop on Superman before the other planet reporters do. We come to learn that the bad guys are an operation they call Intergang, and they have one more sci-fi weapon, a freeze cannon with a few bugs that still work out.
I like the bit at the beginning of, him saving the blimp. And and then we get the question of, who are you? And Lois trying to run after him to get get him to talk. I honestly thought we were going to get the bit possibly of Lois, throwing herself off a building or or creating some other kind of thing, not catastrophe, but something where she has to do, so Superman will come and find and or talk to her. But I like the fact, again, it's not something we normally see of Lois having to, chasing after him to get the scoop,
Right.
That I think is a good bit.
Yeah.
But no, I think the whole thing I think that the only thing I didn't really, I liked it, but at the same time, the idea that, again, a bit of a reshuffle with characters that have, powers in outside of, like, in the comics, it's done a little differently. Roughhouse and the Mist and Silver Banshee.
Right.
I don't mind them having the tech weapons. I'm kind of hoping we get another, we don't really rely on these.
Right.
The only thing I would say so far about the villains is when you have obviously such a vibrant looking character like Superman, I kind of want my villains to have the same sort of, leap off the page color thing as well. And we don't really have that so far with the villains.
Right. Yeah.
I don't dislike it. I'm not saying, we're only 3 episodes in. But that was one of my thoughts. Was just like, I was like, oh well, okay, we're sort of low teching it for now, and who knows what we'll get to after a while, right?
Right. I like the takes that we're getting. My first instinct when we see like Kyle and Roughhouse and
Right.
Siobhan McDougal, who I placed Siobhan immediately. The others, I was like, wait a second, who are they?
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, Siobhan McDougal I placed immediately, and I like her design. I like her wearing like the skeleton costume from Karate Kid as like pants,
Right.
or whatever it is that she's wearing. Because I was like,
Right.
oh, it's so close. Like it's. I can see it. I can again see the through line to it. It's a fun design.
The hair's cool too.
And the hair is cool. Like she's a great design. I love. I like that character. But I was thinking, I was like, oh yeah, like now we got like these are young takes compared to what we're used to. But I'm like, we've got a young Superman, Lois, and Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, okay, yeah, it makes sense to have some of our villains are going to be the same age as them. It's only natural in this world that we're in. Yeah. They're not all going to be older. They're not all going to be like, fully adult.
Right.
So I thought it was kind of cool to see some of them as younger. And yeah, and every time they kept seeing people with this advanced technology as weapons, I kept thinking, is this Intergang? Is this Intergang in the previous like 2 episodes?
Mm-hmm.
And we finally in this one got like the Intergang Forever cheer.
Right.
Where I'm like, okay, yeah,
Right.
Yeah, that's confirmation. It is Intergang. That's what's been going on this whole time. But similarly to, Leslie Willis and what happened to her in the previous episode where that gear went wrong and kind of imbued its power into her, that I could see that possibly happening to these kids as well. And the powers that the tech giving them, creating the more comic, familiar versions that we're used to of them. I could see that happening with some of these also.
I can eat it. I like the sort of this one theft kind of as the engine that drives sort of like other things happening at least for a little bit, again, yeah, I mean, I'm with you with the costumes. I agree with both of you. I think, I like full colored costumes and stuff like that, but I also like, we're in the age of like setup and let's build to that for everything too. So, I can, I understand that we're probably getting that down the road. This is the one where like, we got like a really, really good look of Superman when he was doing the blimp thing. And it hit me for the first time in this one. I'm like, that design gives me a lot of John Byrne feels,
Sure.
like it really does. It's such a beautiful Superman design.
Yeah, it works. There's nothing wrong with it. I dig it.
Yeah, I mean, this is that's a great cold open too. Like that.
Yeah, I was just about to bring
fantastic.
that up. I was about to bring that up, Cliff, and I really I liked the fact that we didn't get it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we get it, it's like, oh, that's really cool. The fact that they do all this, the bit with him flying, and we get the wink, which I thought was great. The wink of the camera, which is a Superman staple from like comics, as well as like the old George Reeves show.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like, the audience is in on what's going on with Clark, but Lois doesn't know,
right?
Or whatever. Like all that stuff is great. I love that. Do we want to talk about the opener? Or do we want to save it till after we get?
What do you mean?
The opening. You're talking about Cliff. You're talking about the opening bit, right? Where they have the little montage of stuff.
Oh, you're talking about the opening credits.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about both. So we can talk about both. Yeah, I was talking about like going from the blimp stuff to that. But the opening, I have stuff written. Like the theme song is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to look up who it was in the credits, and it's apparently the song is titled "Up and Away: My Adventures with Superman" theme by Kyle Troop and the Heretics. It reminded me of there's one of my favorite anime series of all time with one of my favorite soundtracks of anything of all time is Fooly Cooly.
Okay.
With a soundtrack provided by the Japanese band The Pillows. This has a similar vibe to that, just in a style and energy that I think vibes the same. And I love it. I love this intro. And I like that we didn't see it before. This is because in the first two episodes, we got more of like a truncated short score-ish, like superhero score type musical interlude, just to give us the titles. And now this is the episode where we're like we're in our stream, we're in the swing of things. So now this is we get our full like title sequence, and I love it.
Yeah. Well, what did you want to get into, Frank, about the title sequence?
Oh, like I said, the wink was the one thing. I love the bit where like I slowed it down to look and see what the villains, the big
what else we're seeing.
Yeah, oversized villains on the horizon thing. Yeah, I thought that was a nice bit. But mostly just like I love the fact that like unlike a lot of the other Superman stuff, shows, comics, there's the bit where like they're all standing together and it's almost that shoulder to shoulder moment. And again, I've railed against the idea of like, do we always need a guy in the chair? Because then the guy in the chair becomes like 12 people as opposed to just being like, well, it's a Superman show or a Flash show. And now it's like, we are all the Flash. No, you're not. No, you're not all the Flash.
Yeah.
I like the fact that it's when you get that shot, it's very much them standing with Clark. And it's very subtle, but Lois takes his hand.
Okay. I didn't notice. I'll have to watch again.
I didn't notice.
It's great.
Good
it's
catch.
It's a nice bit where she like steps up next to him and just takes his hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, but it's not, again, it's not necessarily the three of them, it doesn't look, I don't know, again, we don't know if they're going to get to a reveal about whether or not he is or he isn't, right? Mm-hmm. We're not anywhere near there yet.
Right.
But just the idea of in the credit or the opening bit, it's very much we're standing with Clark, which I think is very telling because again, we don't always get that.
Yeah. So something else in this, we get the final introduction, or not the final, we get our first look at some supporting cast members, Steve Lombard, Cat Grant, and Ronnie Troop. In a very Team Rocket introduction, where I guess in this circumstances, Ronnie Troop is like the Meowth of this trio, a little less enthused than the other two. But yeah, it was totally a Team Rocket intro, and it was fantastic for those characters, especially Steve Lombard and Cat Grant.
Yeah,
they're very much they very much have Team Rocket energy.
I love in the early bit too, after Clark gives Lois her favorite coffee from across the city, where she's like, why doesn't Superman want to be interviewed? And he's like, well, maybe he doesn't want his secrets all plastered out. And she's like, right, but he doesn't know I'm going to do that.
Right.
And I love that too. I love the idea that like, he's having a hard time trying to keep like, I know this, but I'm not supposed to know this as Superman. And you know what I mean? I just thought that was a really, really neat bit that calls attention to it that we don't see quite so often.
I like along those lines, I like the bit of him when he's doing the interview, like he switches into his Superman voice and realizes I probably shouldn't use my Superman voice for this.
The mock interview when she's practicing.
Yeah, when she's like, you be Superman and I'm going to be me and I'll interview. And he starts to talk like Superman is like, oh, that's probably a terrible, terrible idea. Let me switch back to Clark. That and later on when they find out about the three criminals, well, I have to go stop them.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to go and find out where they are, that kind of thing. I like the fact that he has that. He doesn't have that quite worked out just yet.
Mm.
I love how much also Lois steals.
Yeah. Oh my God. All the time.
Yeah. It was so funny when she steals the press badges of Steve and Kat and Ronnie so that they can get into the prison after they've broken out to get clues and get a sense of things. But I also like that she steals the warden's badge.
Yes.
And that bit, I rewound that bit so many times. That cracked me up.
Yeah.
She whips that badge out and Clark's like,
yeah.
Yeah. Great moment. Great moment between the two of them.
I did look up the warden. I did at one point think that was going to be Maggie Sawyer.
Me too. I looked it up also.
And I looked up the fact that she was, a warden at Blackgate at one point?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I never heard of her.
I never encountered that character either. She's fairly recent.
Okay.
But yeah, it's our first nod to Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
She's a character named Agatha Zorbatos.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I figured, okay. But yeah, that was, I liked the bit with, she lifted after they got scooped, and then, Steve Lombard walks off with their murder board, which is great. And her coffee, no less. That was the other thing. Lois has no problem being like, I'm going to steal these badges from them. And the whole definition of like, well, I borrowed them without them looking. He's like, that's the very definition of stealing.
Yeah.
No, I like the fact that they keep, it keeps butting up against his, his small town sensibilities of right and wrong. And Lois is a little more, savvy, realizing she's got to do sometimes what she's got to do. But yeah, I love the bit where she lifts the card off the warden as well.
Yeah.
For them to go around and be able to get more clues. Yeah. It's not anything I don't think she would do, so it works.
Yeah. Which now we're 2.5 episodes in reviewing. I'm ready to go ahead and make this call. Like, God, Lois is making this show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, God, she's so the MVP of the show. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. This take is so enjoyable for me.
Yes.
All right. So, Lois, Clark, and Jimmy discover that Inner Gang is planning on robbing a bank. During said robbery, the ice cannon gets jammed in a fight with Superman. Roughhouse tries to fix it, but ends up smashing it, causing the power crystal to come loose and freeze everyone in the room. The ice ray starts to spread outside into the streets. Outside, Lois and Jimmy help people get to safety, while inside, Superman gets trapped by the ice. His eyes begin to glow, and he's able to use X-ray vision to see Lois and Jimmy in trouble outside, and then uses heat vision, which is triggered for the first time, to free himself and destroy the power crystal. The crystal's destruction gives Superman yet another vision, this time of some kind of invasion. Outside the bank, once everyone is safe, Superman approaches Lois and grants her a private interview away from all the other reporters on the roof of the Daily Planet. Her questions center on where he comes from and the source of his abilities, which he's unfortunately doesn't know the answer to any of them. But he assures her what matters is that he's here to help the people of Metropolis. Superman flies off, but then quickly reappears on the roof as Clark. Thrilled that Lois is able to get her interview with Superman. When he asks what she thought of Superman, she replies, he's a liar.
Mm-hmm.
And we roll credits.
Yes.
It's a great twist.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a great bit. Really great bit. Wait, what? Yeah, real quick with the bank robbery, I do like the fact that, when Jimmy reveals the whole thing of, it worked the first time. Again, it's not like getting back to my whole thing of are they going to throw themselves into disasters until he shows up? Yeah, they're gonna.
Yeah. But I like that they respect Knuckles.
Yeah.
It worked the first time.
Yeah. But like that, and I like the bit where he says, what was he say? My notes. Oh yeah, were you going to just find trouble then ambush Superman when he flies in? Yeah. You did that on purpose? Yeah, that whole bit is great. Love that. I thought that was so funny. Yeah, they're like, yeah, basically that's what we did. So, I like the fact that the villains are sort of again Clark or Superman is basically like tells the EMT guy like people need help.
Yeah.
He recognized the fact that when he tells Lois and Jimmy to run, they help people, which again, it speaks to character.
Yeah.
I like the fact that, you get the subtle mystery man looking over, it looks like it's almost like, oh, I've got new recruits.
Right.
Yeah.
That whole bit
the
too.
agent from episode 2 is back again.
Yes, it's back again.
Now disguised as a paramedic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that the crystal destruction with the heat vision looks like it takes some effort also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To focus it and it's not just an easy, his heat vision can destroy everything. I like that it, sounds like he's trying. He's trying hard.
Yeah. Everything is not, not without effort, even though he's Superman, which is cool. Oh, you definitely get that moment of like, oh, so, when he goes to pick her up, obviously there's a moment of like, oh, when he picks her up off the ground and, you get the character blushing, when he puts his hand over hers with the recorder.
Yeah.
Trying to be sincere. I like that bit too, because again, it's just very much of like, well, as I think it's Gail Simone when Man of Steel, the Henry Cavill one came out. Basically, she made a comment, or I think it was on Twitter, where she was basically like, look, there's no reason in the world why anyone wouldn't think that Superman's attractive.
Right.
Right. She puts it a different way, and you can look up the tweet, but she puts it like, there's no way in the world that you wouldn't think that he is. So, the fact that people thought Henry Cavill was attractive, and Lois would feel the same way about this guy, being able to like lift her up. Again, it's done differently. We get it. It's kind of, to me, it was like a kind of a callback to what we got in the first episode where Clark is like boosting her up.
Right. And
she realizes how easily he can do that.
Right.
And she's at that moment of like, oh, well, like, and it's the same thing, but with, to the nth degree with Superman doing that when he puts her on the rooftop. I thought it was kind of like a cute little callback to what we'd already seen with Clark, but now it's obviously with Superman. So,
yeah. That scene was the most scared I've ever been watching the show so far.
Why?
Oh, when he flies with her?
Because I was like, oh man, like it's really cool that they made me feel this way. But I'm like, oh man, is she gonna start crushing on Superman? No,
right.
That was my thought.
Well, but again, it's classic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a classic triangle. We got the classic triangle with it, and then on top of that, like we said, I don't count Clark out now.
Right.
I just see it as, okay, this makes a lot more sense as to why she would have trouble trying to figure out who she'd want to be with.
Yeah.
But it hit me, though, in that scene, too, that, like, this does what every good Spider-Man story does for me.
It's interesting you say that. Go on.
Right? No, I'm just, because I always know a Spider-Man story is working for me when the Peter stuff gets me and a bad guy shows up and I'm like, man.
Right? I could take another 7 minutes of not this.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly. And
I agree.
And this show, maybe I don't think I've ever felt that way with a Superman show.
Mm-hmm.
And I like it.
Well, but here's the main takeaway that I immediately felt in watching it was, this is spectacular Superman.
Okay.
Very much spectacular Superman.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a reshuffling of stories of the characters we've seen before in the comics. Some of them have their powers already, some of them don't. Some of them are low-level characters, and then, they're getting more of an emphasis as the show goes on. But yeah, I agree with you. That was my feeling, too, is like, this feels very much a, like I said, I've never seen to me, the triangle is kind of like, I get it, but I don't quite get it.
Yeah.
I get the trope, but this to me works much better as a thing. Because again, we've taken the time to set up, well, yeah, of course you would fall for Clark. Clark's awesome.
Right.
But at the same time, there's Superman. So
Now my question here, though, does she know already?
No.
You don't think so? But I think that line, like, oh, he's a liar, is meant to be like, does she know? Because she hears both voices, like, back to back.
Right.
Right?
No, I get what you're saying. I just think, to me, I think it's more along the lines of just that he's coming off as too aw shucks
Right.
for her. and she just doesn't. She's not used to encountering someone who's that genuine. Like I think that's what I think her thing is about that.
And she doesn't believe he doesn't know the stuff he says he doesn't know.
And there's that aspect of it too. But I think it's also the idea of like you're just here to help. Like I know in the second episode she has that bit when they're talking when they set up their quote unquote office, and she's like, "No, this guy that just basically came out of the sky to help us. I want to know more about him." I think she's sincere when she's saying that, but I also get the feeling of, when she said that, she also has that feeling of, well, yeah, he's doing that, but why would someone do that?
Right.
Yeah. I'm not, I'm not saying that she's not used to people being, she's seen people that are horrible, but I feel also like, Superman's in a different league, quote unquote,
So I have two other questions.
Okay.
So, do we think that all these bad guys getting rounded up, is this a mashup of the Suicide Squad and the Revenge Squad?
Yes.
You think so?
sorry, not to cut you off, but I absolutely do.
No. That was the end of the question. Like,
I think we're getting the intersection of Task Force X / Suicide Squad / Superman Revenge Squad.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think Strikers is replacing Bell Rev?
I could see that. Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
And then what do we make about the vision now that shows this invasion?
My first thought was Brainiac.
You thought Brainiac. So you think this is something happening, not something... You don't think that's the destruction of Krypton?
No, I took it much more along the lines of, how do I put it? Just the idea that, yeah, that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I look at a lot of the stuff I think is future stuff, but I also feel like it's like when I see robots being taken over, I immediately thought Brainiac.
Okay. Clifton, how about you? How did you read it?
I read it as both.
Okay.
I read it as what happened, like flashback, possibly is what happened to Krypton and something that could happen to Earth and may be about to. That's how I take it.
Okay. I think I'm in your camp too. Also, just, I mean, like, it's fun to theorize and stuff like that. Like, I love it. It's one of my favorite sports. But I also, like, I'm enjoying it so much, I just kind of want to let the show, like, wash over me a little bit too. You know, and I don't want to spend so much energy, like, trying to figure it out. Which is a lot of fun. All right, so any final thoughts? 3 episodes? How are we liking it so far?
I'm liking it a lot. One thing I didn't cover overall is just the style of the show. This is just a general thought about everything we've seen so far, just the animation style, the energy that it has. Clearly anime influenced, but in a hybridized way. So like they're adding stuff of their own. They're taking influences from action anime, Japanese animation. They're also borrowing, I feel a lot like they're inspired a lot by kind of the French anime hybrids that are out there, like Totally Spies from 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Because Lois's design, Lois could totally be a totally spy, like straight up. I think that's very much an influence on Lois's design from them. But just overall, like, no, I love the style of it. I love that it's got, just pieces from everywhere and by way of America, by way of American comics. Like, it's just throwing lots of stuff into the pot. And I think it looks really cool.
You know what else it gives me vibes from? Too? Maybe not so much in the visual sense, but in tone. Airbender.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the comedy feel like the really snappy comedy feels so much like Aang and the cabbage guy. Right? Like,
yeah.
Yep.
I'm not the biggest anime fan in the world.
Right.
That's not news. But I do find like the charm of the show works because of it and not in spite of it.
Right.
I still I had a conversation with Tommy when I had seen the first 2. I said, not sure why that was chosen that way to do, because I don't know if you would, again, it's not like it's not not that anime is off-putting to me. It's just one of those things where I stylize it's too stylized for me sometimes.
Okay.
I just feel like there's not enough and maybe it's just my ignorance of anime, but it's one of the things where I just don't feel like there's enough stylization for characters. That's just me. That's me speaking for me. But I in this, like I said, I just think that it's so sweet and earnest, and that the anime style works for it. I think a lot of the stuff that's the trope of anime works for it really, really well.
Yeah.
And I don't think, again, I was telling Tommy, I just, I'm still trying to find the exact like sweet spot of why it had to be anime, but at the same time, I'm glad that it is.
Right.
That's where I'm at with it.
Big.
I'm
Yeah.
right.
Right. That's big news right there.
Yeah. That's not, I mean, that was my biggest thing about, watching in the first place. It was like, well, okay. And honestly, I tried to put myself back in time to the way I felt about when I first saw the shots of Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
And immediately was like, ugh, and turned my nose up at it.
Oh yeah.
And now I'm like, I'll champion that show all day long. That show's amazing.
Right. You turned on Brave and the Bold.
I did
to the better.
To the better, for sure. I absolutely did. So I
love that show.
That's a terrific show. So I was, I try to put myself in the position of like, well, you love that. And, that one was great. And it wasn't necessarily what you thought it was going to be. So, yeah, like I said, I just wondered, like I said, when I was talking to Tommy about that, wondered what the decision was. But I'm good with it. I think it's great. I can't wait to see where it goes. And I will say this, I'm really impressed by the voice work. That's something we haven't really talked about.
Right.
But I think the voice work across the board is pretty great. And I will say that the only one that I was kind of like, huh? About was Chris Parnell as our mystery man.
Yes. Yes. And it's even more confounding. I think we'll find, but not to spoil anything. But
no, if you're familiar with Chris Parnell and his work on other shows, like Rick and Morty and his SNL work.
Right.
I like the guy. I think he does great work. I just was kind of like, really?
Yeah.
That guy is going to play.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing against him. He's a fine voice actor, and I've enjoyed his comedy for years. But I just,
No, I like it. I actually like it. Like I'm not making any excuses for it or anything like that. I think we're getting, reinterpretation on some level. I think.
Right.
No, I thought it sounded cool. I thought, I'm with you. I think everybody was really, really good. The anime influence thing, I looked no farther other than, the show is being made by probably people in their 20s and 30s. And, they grew up on Pokemon, and Cowboy Bebop, and
Totally Spies.
Yeah,
Totally Spies.
And I dig that, it's like I'm turning the page on Bruce Timm, and I'm not. Like, I still love that stuff, but it's so cool to get DC stuff that doesn't all look the same now. And I think back to like the last couple of decade of shows, decade or more, like Brave and the Bold and Green Lantern and Young Justice, and they all like there's not necessarily like a house style that everything fits in and everything like that. And I like that all the Bruce Timm stuff looked the same because it was all like a cohesive story and connected. And I still like that stuff looks like that on occasion. But I like that we're playing with it more. And it's one of my favorite things about when a cartoon thing comes out. When I hear something's being made, I immediately want to go like, what's it going to look like? I can't wait till the first images come out.
Yeah. I had that. The other thing I had was that pang of like, well, they haven't announced it yet, but when are they announcing the comic book?
Right.
Because that's coming. If it does that should be the next thing is, we're doing a comic book adventures.
Just going back to voices for just 1 second. Should give a shout out to Jack Quaid. As Clark.
Yeah.
Because I forgot, like I had heard in an announcement that it was going to be him. And I've seen The Boys. I've seen Scream, the Scream films that he was in. I've seen him in stuff, and so I was familiar with him, but I forgot by the time I watched the show and didn't even realize it until the end credits. And so, oh yeah, like that's who it was. Like he was good. Like he was good. Because I mean, if you know him from his other stuff, he plays an everyman, especially in Boys. Like he plays an everyman character, but like a quirky, neurotic everyman character, and not a Clark Kent wholesome everyman character. And it was nice to see that he could, because that was my question. I was like, I don't know how he'll do, but like, yeah, no, he pulls off that charm, that like that innocence very well, I think. A different kind of everyman. So do shout out to him. That was very good. The Chris Parnell character, the first time I thought he was King Faraday.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
At first. And then I was like, oh, maybe, because it's like an agent-ish character, white hair.
Right.
But yeah, no, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. I'm not opposed, but I'm curious.
Right.
I'm cautious, but intrigued to see where this character goes.
And so, and I didn't answer. So yeah, as far as what I'm thinking, I love everything we've seen so far. I adore this show so far.
Okay.
And like I was kind of thinking when stuff finally started coming out, because we had those first like 2 images for like 2.5 years, 3 years when they announced the show, but we didn't see anything for it for a long time. It's so cool to have a good Superman animated thing again, which I looked it up, like it was like 17 years since we had another Superman animated show.
Right.
Yeah.
That's Legion. Like,
right.
But,
yeah. That's a forgotten one.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. So it's cool. It's definitely cool. So, all right. So we are going to close out with just some things that we're hopeful maybe will pop up in the show, like characters or things that we want to see through this filter. But first, if you like the show, you can check out all of our episodes on letmeknowhowitis.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Just please, however you find us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. And finally, if you want to suggest a topic, let us know in the comments, Twitter at LMKHII, or email us at info@letmeknowhowitis.com. All right, who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
I'm kind of hoping we're going to get Mixie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be fun.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting and fun, and I also think it'll be a sort of a thing of much more of right off the bat, being much more of a trickster god than we've ever seen him before.
Right.
I like so far what I've seen with lesser villains. Like, I'm hoping we're not going to get to the A-listers right away.
Yeah.
Because I think what we're doing, what they're doing so far with what they're building and layering, I think is great. So that's my, and not that Mixie's not an A-list Superman villain, but it's one of those things where most people don't think of that character when they start talking about Superman's, rogues. So yeah, I hope we see him fairly soon.
Yeah, I was thinking Mixie as well. But thinking of just how how the show is currently a little bit grounded for now. And I don't think they're going to build, wider and wider as they go. But just thinking of someone that I think could be on the horizon pretty quick is Metallo. With just how the stories are going with this technology and connections to possibly Krypton, as we theorize. I think there could be a fun take in there for Metallo to come in and be a pretty good threat.
I think it's interesting we didn't get any mention of Lana at all.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what that's going to be like.
Right. Yeah. There's still a lot of ground to cover between 8 to 10-year-old Clark in Smallville and 20-ish-year-old Clark in Metropolis. So we might get filled in flashbacks.
But it's tough. I mean, it's hard because it's so early and a lot of, they barely scratched the surface on things. But I really want Luminous. I so desperately want that character have more staying power.
Yeah, I love Luminous.
All right, what's Luminous's deal?
He's a light centric bad guy that was also an original from Superman the Animated Series, so he's kind of like a Tron outfit visual.
Right.
That's neat. And he's able to do stuff with hard light and holograms and
has a bone to pick or a grudge against Lois as well, right? So that was I love
that would
Luminous.
be a fun one to see.
Yeah. And then Bibbo, because I love Bibbo, and I think he's just so important as the voice of the city. So, but I'm sure we're gonna get to a lot of that stuff. I have faith. I have a lot of faith. Like I said, I love the show. So it's appointment watching for me.
At the strange appointment time of midnight on a Thursday night
Yeah.
Right.
for a Superman cartoon. We didn't get into that, but that is a little odd, I thought.
Yeah.
For the kids.
Right.
All right. So that's My Adventures with Superman. Thursday nights at midnight on Adult Swim. Next day streaming on Max. As always, we'll post links and examples to everything we talk about on letmeknowhowitis.com. There you can check out all of our past episodes or wherever you get your podcast. Just please, however you find us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. And we will see you guys next time.